And that's the book of the giants. Let me get Alan to comment, and then we're going to go into the book of Enoch, which reconfirms this but is not fragmented. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, so you could read that book in 5-10 minutes on sacredtext.com. I found it interesting because they are referring to giants and monsters. Again, Dewey Rheims, Latin Vulgate, renders the Nephilim in Numbers 13, around 33, as monsters. Second Enoch speaks of them teaching mixture. And again, in Anunnaki proclaim that they bred the human race in clay pots. A visual representation that you can see this upon simply is just going onto the WHO website, who's propagating vaccines on the globe, is the caduceus, which is a spirohelix of the serpent. If you can see into that realm, the demonic is based up of Nephilim spirits, reptilian spirits, as well as transgenic, so which would be half human, half animal spirits. That's who rove. That's the powers and principalities and the spiritual wickedness that actually once roamed the globe in the physical.
Yeah, absolutely. And after the flood, we'll be covering that also from the Book of Jubilees. These beings, because they were not natural beings, they were hybrid beings due to the interdiction of these Anunnaki watchers, fallen angels, whatever you want to call them. But they had no part in salvation, so they became disembodied souls and familiar spirits, and they were looking for souls to possess after the flood, and we'll cover that as well. But going into the Book of Enoch. And this will cover the story that we just brought forth, the Book of Giants, in a little bit more precise detail. Before all these things, and this is chapter 12 from the Book of Enoch. Before all these things, Enoch was concealed, nor did any one of the sons of men know where he was concealed, where he had been, and what had happened. He was wholly engaged with the Holy One and with the watchers in his day. I, Enoch, was blessing the great Lord and King of peace, and behold, the watchers called me, Enoch, the scribe. Then the Lord said to me, Enoch, scribe of righteousness, go tell the watchers of heaven, who have deserted the lofty sky and their holy everlasting station, who have been polluted with women, and have done as the sons of men do, by taking to themselves wives, and who have been greatly corrupted on the earth, that on the earth they shall never obtain peace and remission of sin, for they shall not rejoice in their offspring. They shall behold the slaughter of their beloved, and shall lament for the destruction of their sons, and shall petition forever, but shall not obtain mercy and peace. Chapter 13. Then Enoch, passing on, said to Azazel, you shall not obtain peace. A great sentence is gone forth against you. He shall bind you. Neither shall relief, mercy, and supplication be yours on account of the oppression which you have taught, an account of every act of blasphemy, tyranny, and sin which you have discovered to the children of men. And then, departing from him, I spoke to them all together. And they all became terrified and trembled, beseeching me to write for them a memorial of supplication, that they might obtain forgiveness, and that I might make the memorial of their prayer ascend up before the God of heaven, because they could not themselves thenceforward address him, nor raise up their eyes to heaven on account of the disgraceful offense for which they were judged. And then I wrote a memorial of their prayer and supplication for their spirits, for everything which they had done, and for the subject of their entreaty, that they might attain remission and rest. Proceeding on, I continued over the waters of Dabanan, which is on the right side to the west, Ammon, reading the memorial of the prayer until I fell asleep. And behold, a dream came to me, and visions appeared above me. I fell down and saw a vision of punishment, that I might relate it to the sons of heaven, and reprove them. And when I awoke, I went to them, all being collected together, stood weeping in Olil-Thayo, which is situated between Libanos and Sinister, with their faces veiled. This is the book of the words of righteousness, and of the reproof of the watchers, who belong to the world according to that which he, who is holy and great, commanded in the vision. I perceived in my dream that I was now speaking with a tongue of flesh, and with my breath which the Mighty One has put into the mouth of men, that they might converse with it. And understanding with the heart, as he has created and given to men the power of comprehending the word of understanding, so hath he created and given to me the power of reproving the watchers, the offspring of heaven. I have written you your petition, and in my vision it has been shown me that what you request will not be granted you as long as the world endures. Judgment has been passed upon you. Your request will not be granted you. From this time forward, never shall you ascend into heaven. He has said that on the earth he will bind you as long as the world endures. But before these things you shall behold the destruction of your beloved sons. You shall not possess them, but they shall fall before you by the sword. And neither shall you entreat for them, not for yourselves, but you shall weep and supplicate in silence the words of the book which I wrote. That's from the book of Enoch. And so you can see that what these particular beings, when the Lord brought judgment upon them, they could not even pray to him. He wouldn't even allow them to even look to heaven and supplicate him in prayer any longer. That's how great the sin was that they brought into the world. And not just for their birthing the giants, but for all their other wicked deeds. And the book of Enoch talks about how they even introduced makeup to women so that they could beautify themselves, and gold and silver as ornaments so that they can create jewelry. And Azazel taught them how to create weapons of war and spread war against among humanity. And humanity was at war with the giants because they were eating and drinking the blood of humanity. And so these great abominations that they brought into the world is why the Lord brought such an incredible judgment upon them. And we're going to cover that judgment from the flood and beyond, because unless you understand what we're talking about now, you may get confused as to why Yahweh said in the Old Testament, when he sent the Israel and the people into the promised land, to wipe out all seed, all man, woman, and children, because they were going up against these giants and these abominable bloodlines. And that's why the Lord passed judgment just as severely then as he did with this particular flood. Alan?
This is what took man out of paradise and converted what would be now considered a battle within man, the darkness within. They genetically perverted the nature and the form of God's beloved sons, and punishment fits the crime always with Yahweh. For the corruption of his children, he is disbanded and dislocated the fallen angels and their progeny, who Enoch refers to as well as their dearly beloved sons, to eternal hellfire, to eternal damnation, mortal and eternal enemies of God. And in Genesis 6 and 4 in the Living Bible, which, again, I mentioned this before, I'm not a large proponent of paraphrasing, but this is an exact, correct rendition. It says in 6:4, in those days and even afterwards, when the evil beings from the spirit world were sexually involved with human women, their children became giants, of whom so many legends are told. When the Lord God saw the extensive human wickedness, again, due to that genetic corruption, the darkness that was brought into man through the fallen genetics, fallen angelic genetics, and that he the trend and direction of men's lives were only towards evil. This is again due to the internal evil that the Watchers, corrupted man with through sexual intercourse with the women. He was sorry. He had made them, and it broke his heart.
Absolutely. This is a particular quote from the Book of Jubilees, chapter 7, and it will kind of sum up what we've been talking about. For owning to these three things came the flood upon the earth, namely, owning to the fornication wherein the Watchers against the law of their ordinances went a-whoring after the daughters of men, and took themselves wives of all which they chose. And they made the beginning of uncleanness, and they begat sons, the Nephilim, and they were all unalike, and they devoured one another. And the giants slew the Nephilim, and the Nephilim slew the Elho, and the Elho mankind, and one man another. And everyone sold himself to the work of iniquity, and to shed much blood, and the earth was filled with iniquity. And after this they sinned against the beasts and the birds, and all that moves and walks on the earth, and much blood was shed on the earth, and every imagination and desire of men imagined vanity and evil continually. And the Lord destroyed everything from off the face of the earth because of the wickedness of their deeds, and because of the blood which they had shed in the midst of the earth. He destroyed everything, and we were left, I and you, my sons, and everything. This is Noah that's talking. I and you, my sons, and everything that entered with us into the ark. And behold, I see your works before me, that you do not walk in righteousness. For in the path of destruction you have begun to walk, and you are parting from one another, and are envious one of another. And so it comes that you are not in harmony, my sons, each with his brother. For I see and behold, the demons have begun their seductions against you and against your children. And now I fear on your behalf that after my death ye will shed the blood of men upon the earth, and that ye too will be destroyed from the face of the earth. For whoso sheddeth man's blood, and whoso eateth the blood of any flesh, shall be destroyed from the earth. And there shall not be left any man that eateth blood, or that sheddeth the blood of man on the earth. Nor shall there be left to him any seed or descendant living under heaven. For into Sheol shall they go, and into the place of condemnation shall they descend. And into the darkness of the deep they shall all be removed by a violent death. There shall be no blood seen upon you. Of all the blood there shall be all in the days of which ye have killed any beast or cattle, or whatever flies upon the earth. And work ye good work to your souls by covering that which has been shed on the face of the earth. And ye shall not be like him who eats with blood, but guard yourselves that none may eat blood before you. Cover the blood, for thus have I been commanded to testify to you and your children together with all flesh. And suffer not the soul to be eaten with the flesh, that your blood, which is your life, may not be required at the hands of any flesh that sheds it on the earth. For the earth will not be clean from the blood at the hand, which has been shed upon it. For only through the blood of him that shed it will the earth be purified throughout all its generations. Now the whole thing about the blood and the covenant that the Lord had, Yahweh had with Noah after he allowed him to make it through the flood, and he made this covenant with him that he should eat no flesh that has the blood in it. That was as a condemnation to the giants and to the Watchers and the children of the giants, because they became flesh eaters. Prior to this particular covenant with Noah, humanity only ate, they were vegetarians. They didn't eat the flesh or the blood of creatures or humanity. And so the Lord gave Noah and his sons the right to eat flesh after the flood, so long as it did not have the blood within it. And that was as a condemnation to the wickedness of the giants and their cannibalistic ways and their blood-drinking ways. Alan?
Yeah, just to credit the book of Enoch and Enoch himself, again, Jude 1:14 says that Enoch, also the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these things, saying. So obviously Jude had read this book. Hebrew 11:5 says, by faith Enoch was translated, again, caught up. That's what the entire premise of the book of Enoch was, is walking with the angelic, walking in the third, fourth, and fifth heavens. Says that he pleased God. And in Micah 3, it speaks about the heads and the princes of the house of Israel, and this isn't referring to the leaders. It's a context of the spirit realm. It says, you who hate good and love evil, who strip the skin from my people and the flesh from their bones. So many people just pass over things in the Word of God just thinking it's a type of parable or whatnot, but often things are very literal. And just to back up that quote in Genesis 6 as well as the book of Enoch 6, they parallel one another. So in Enoch 1, the first book, the Ethiopia, it says they began to sin against the birds and the beasts, the reptiles and the fish, and to devour one another's flesh. And again, in 86, it speaks about stars descending and casting themselves down from heaven. It says they became bulls amongst those cattle and pastured with them amongst them. And I looked at them and saw, referring to the angels, behold, they all let out their privy members like horses and began to cover the cows of the oxen, and they all became pregnant and bare elephants, camels, and asses. So again, this is obviously metaphoric, but it's speaking of mixture, angelic, human mixture, creating a hybrid creature.
Absolutely. And now we're to the point where we're going to cover how the giants made it through the flood, and also how the Canaanites, the Cain line, their bloodline, also made it through the flood. Because this is a very interesting area, and I just learned something recently in studying and researching the Targum, and I hope that you guys find this interesting, because I really did as well, and I think I shared this with Alan as well. But in the Targums, right after Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed and Lot was taken captive, well, it says this: and Og came, who had been spared from the giants that died in the deluge, and had ridden protected upon the top of the ark, and sustained with food by Noah, not being spared through high righteousness, but that the inhabitants of the world might see the power of the Lord and say, were there not giants who in the first times rebelled against the Lord of the world and perished from the earth? But when these kings made war, behold, Og, who was with them, said in his heart, I will go and show Abram concerning Lot, who is led captive, that he may come and deliver him from the hands of the kings into whose hands he had been delivered. And so this particular story is saying that it was Og of Bashan who had been spared by riding on top of the ark during the flood, and that he was sustained with food by Noah, that was how he survived. And he was the one that went to Abram to let Abram know that Lot had been taken as captive. And so this particular story intrigued me because I had never, ever heard of that before. I did, however, read a long time ago in a mythology book about giants that Og, held on to the ark, but I had never, ever found it in the Word.